Hello and welcome back to our lectures together. Hoping you're doing great and prepared for our lectures together. First of all, allow me to wish you all a great week and good health. Always wish you to be safe. I don't know whenever you listen or watch this lecture. I just want you to know that I wish you all the best. Okay, today we're going to follow whatever we started to discuss in the previous lecture, talking about civil society. When we start to talk about the core definition, the core functions, and how there was a huge space between government, state, and civil society. Today, I think we're going to move forward to discuss the modern definition of civil society, how things progress, the improvement on the definition and the functions. So, let's start our lecture together. Civil society, as we said, is a core element. Nowadays, we're not gonna discuss civil society as only a part of the structure inside the government. We decided that civil society started to embody a new line in political science. It could be an actor, it could be a phenomena, it could be a structure, it could be anything if it starts to have the function that we talked in the previous lecture about. And I just want to highlight a very crucial point, which is a government could never have 100% control over CSOs, because it could be visible, it could be physical, online, etc., etc., and this makes things much dangerous. So let's start. Whenever we talked about any term or about any phenomena, it is definitely dynamic, and especially when we talked about political science. So, and as we said, as any other terms, definitions of social society had changed. To track these changes, let's start with saying that defining civil society is not a simple task from the beginning. As we said, the term started in the 1918s when it was defined with the non-state protest movements and authoritarian regime in the Eastern Europe and Latin America. Argues that there have significant changes over time in the civil society landscape, and the concept has evolved from associational platforms to comprise a wide range of organized and organic groups of different forms, functions, and sizes. At different periods, community-based organizations, workers, labor unions, professional associations, NGOs have been the most prominent in the civil society space. However, today, civil society is recognized as diverse and ever wider ecosystem of individuals, communities, organizations. So, to track the definition, it starts in the early 1918s as the non-state protest movement, blah, blah, blah. Then it turns to be certain gathering of workers, etc., etc. Till today, it is a diverse, wide range of actors, elements that cannot have certain identity as much as having certain function. So let's start talking about these modern tracks together and see where we can end together. One of the most important contributions in describing the changing and definition of civil society was the report which published by the World Bank. The World Economic Forum launched a report called Future Role of Civil Society. This project was published in 2012, The core aim of it was to explore the rapidly evolving space in which civil society actors operate. We're going to refer to this report as WEF later on. This report actually argued that the definitions of civil society are very changeable, and the change of the definition is not only based on the definition, but it's also based on certain circumstances. In this report, civil society is now recognized as encompassing far more than a mere sector dominant by the NGO community. Civil society today, upon this report, includes an ever wider and more vibrant range of organized and unorganized groups, as new civil society actors blur the boundaries between sectors and experiment with new organizational form, both online and offline. In this report, the idea of the importance of online track changed the entire perspective of defining civil society. So from this point on, we're going to talk about most modern elements in describing civil society in a way or another. In this report, we can see a lot of description, analyzing certain elements, but I thought we're going to spotlight on certain elements that are relevant to our discussion. So, the report highlighted how information communication technologies had opened up spaces for actions, for new activities, new interference for the civil society organization. For example, there has been significant growth in online civil society activities, as we mentioned before, which had enabled the growth of networks across geographical, social, physical diversities and places. This report highlighted the examples of documentary Connie 2012 as an example of the ability of a small group of people to rapidly mobilize significant online activity and media attention around the topic that had previously been relatively unknown. Please search for Connie 2012. This is one of the most important advocacy campaign in the previous decade. I want you to search about this case and tell me what do you think. Again, I want you to search about what BDS do. This will be the puzzle for today, actually, but I wanted to highlight it here because I want you to link things to each other. We should say that whenever we talk about civil society nowadays, we should argue that the nature of civil society changed. What is does is evolving in response to both technological developments and other kinds of changes in the structure of the societies themselves, as well as changing definitions of civil societies. The role and operating environments of civil societies are also changed. According to the report and other literature, we can see that the changing roles include civil society actors acting as facilitators, more innovators, as well as service providers and advocates. So it's not only the definition, it's again the environment, the structure, the function. The changing context includes economic, geopolitical, shifting from Europe, North America. Technology is changing traditional funding models even, and dramatically shifting social engagement, and political pressures are restricting the space for civil society activities in many countries. So it is everywhere. It is It's not limited to certain places or certain countries. Now it is everywhere. The report argues that looking forward to the strategy of 2030, anyone who will be part of the civil society or want to be a leader in civil society need to understand how shifting external context will shape new opportunities to achieve impact, and what is the changing in means and relationship and the context, including business, government, international actors, etc., etc. They argue that in a very complex, complicated, uncertain environment, actors can no longer work in an isolated track. So they are suggesting or predicting that the future of civil society might be a cluster work. Okay, let's move to another point. And another report or book written by Van Dijk in 2017, the purpose is a definition of civil society as ecosystem of organized and organic social and cultural relations existing in the space between state, business, family, which build on indigenous and external knowledge, values, traditions, and principles to foster collaboration and achievement of specific goals by and among citizens and other stakeholders. This is one of the most recent definitions that include a lot of elements. The structure, the new pattern of relationships, the new pattern of actors, the term of stakeholders. This definition encompasses the wide range of actors operating in the civic space in light of the changes civil society is undergoing, arguing whether it should no longer be viewed as the third sector, but as the glue that binds public and private activity together in such a way as to strengthen the common good of the community as a whole. So this definition changed the features, the components, the ingredients of civil society in general. Okay, let's move to another point. Let's talk about organized and organic civil society. After talking about the changes in the definition, the changes and everything, now let's talk about organized and organic civil society. Changes within the civil society landscape since the beginning of this term means that researchers and everyone who want to discuss this term should distinguish between new, traditional, and formal, organized, organic form of civil society actors. They should distinguish and differentiate between the traditional civil society and the new track of new patterns, actors, and functions of civil society. Organized civil society could encompasses as a wide range of groups, from local community-based organizations to highly professionalized international non-governmental organizations. It could include large development actors and political institutions. It could include other CSOs. Sometimes it could reflect to certain economic patterns, social patterns, etc., etc. Civil society in terms of CSOs could be, for example, the World Bank, could be another institutions. The World Bank defines civil society in this pattern as the wide area of non-governmental and not-for-profit organizations that have a presence in public life, express the interests and values of their members and others based on ethical, cultural, political, scientific, religious, or other considerations. Civil society organizations therefore refer to a wide area of organization, community groups and NGOs, labor unions, indigenous groups, charity organization, faith-based organization, professional association, certain foundations, certain local international organizations. So, to summarize the definition of the World Bank, it is every certain organization, regardless the background of it, that serves certain interests, including other citizens, whether inside or outside the community. Let's talk about another aspect of civil society here. The governance structures of CSOs are varied, but are by their very nature independent of direct government control and management. One study suggested that NGOs as type of CSOs across, for example, more than 40 countries represent 2.2 trillion USA dollars and operating expenditures and employ certain number of workers could reach 54 million of full-time workers with a global volunteer workforce over 350 million people. At the national level, the number of CSOs has also increased in developing and emerging economies. And the most particular countries that reflect this number, India, China, they estimated to have the largest number of NGOs. We can say, for example, they could have like 460,000 and an amount of 3.3 million representatively reflecting the number or the participation of NGOs. And this is actually a huge number, because if you're going to compare this to the budget of the government, it is a very essential, critical amount of money, and actually a very important contribution, like to determine in which sector to participate, how to run these employability, and how to control the employability and the income, etc., etc. It is definitely impact the role of governments. Okay, CSOs have become part of the development process, no doubt, both in ground, where they may be responsible for delivering services or implementing donor fund projects, certain examples like India, Japan, here in Palestine, etc., etc., or as part of governance processes. What I want you to understand from here, the function of these CSOs is no longer limited inside one country or one role or one pattern, or even on inside one identity. Nowadays, EU defines CSOs as an organizational structure whose members serve the general interest through a democratic process, and which plays the role of mediator between public authorities and citizens. See? So it's like, it's part of the political system in a way. It's part of the decision-making system in a way. CSOs have a recognized role in EU's good governance, which includes dialogue with CSOs when preparing proposals for EU, for example, laws. EU examples of CSOs include social partners, trade unions, employers groups, for example, NGOs, grassroots organizations, youth groups, etc., etc. On the other hand, for example, the African Development Bank's definition of civil society includes reference to CSOs comprises the full range of formal and informal organizations within the society. Whatever the definition, is, we could never deny nowadays, it is a parallel actor to governments. It is there participating in the political process in various ways. Okay, it's not only the track or the contribution of civil society. We should also talk about the actors themselves. New actors in the civil society ecosystem include social movements, online activities, bloggers, other influencers, for example, global alliances of civil society organizations and activities dedicated to strengthening citizens' action or citizen action and civil society throughout the world. Define civil society broadly in order to capture the wide range of actors. Let's have an example of this definition. For example, one of the most important definitions said that these actors are non-governmental organizations, activities, activists, civil society coalitions, and networks, protests, and social movements, voluntary bodies, campaigns, organizations, charities, faith-based groups, trade unions, all kinds of foundations that participate to a certain goal, aim, and function. Civil society networks, protests, and social resistance movement include the Arab Spring in much of the modern literature nowadays. Whether we accept or not, social or the civic society participated in forming that phenomena in a way or another. Arab Spring reflects the fact that citizens are becoming more networked. Argue that since 2010 there has been renewed citizen participation and expression around the world, all over the world, not only in Middle East. But particularly the phenomena of Arab Spring reflected the idea of civil society participation in a different way. It was enabled by mobile and social communication technologies and was supported by the traditional institutions of organized civil society. So it was a model of how both integrated to reflect certain attitudes, norms, and participation, especially in Tunis and Egypt. Okay, let's move to another level of definition or discussion. Let's talk about global, national, local. Civil society includes a range of actors operating over different levels. Oxfam is an international NGO, for example, operating around in the world on a number of issues, whereas Women for Change in certain countries undertaking capacity building activities in rural areas. We have also INGOs, international non-governmental organizations, have become increasingly active in political processes and global issues, including transitional policy making for agenda setting through the implementation and evaluation of monitoring over governments. For example, we can have like World Bank, WHO, other NGOs that participated in shaping the policies inside the governments. For example, organized civil society groups and more loosely networked civil society groups are engaged in the official conciliation processes of G20 and the United Nations, as well as monitoring the implementation of the SDGs through the Together 2030 civil society alliances. Some civil society leaders feel that the power and influence of organized groups has emerged at the expense of becoming more establishment-oriented, which is a departure from civil society's political roots in numerous parts of the world. So it is cross borders. It is now more than an actor, it's a decision maker in the world. Again, it is not about the name, it is not about the definition. It's a new scope of interference in the political science and in the decision-making processes all over the world. The concept of transitional civic space or global civic society refers to the space within which individuals mobilize across borders on issues of global public interest. Certain researchers and thinkers suggested that transitional civic society or civil society activism has certain implementation for both national and international policy making, where states are inaccessible to the demands of domestic actors. CSOs can make strategic use of transitional, coalition, and intergovernmental organizations to build pressure from above in addition to pressure from below. And this is exactly the new tendency in describing civil society. Okay, let's quickly talk about what is civil society role and value. Civil society role includes watchdog, holding governments and institutions to account, mentor human rights abuses, provide information to both domestic constitutions and international organizations, or both, advocate, representative, raising awareness of issues, giving a voice to the marginalized, and advocate for change. Certain counseling, pressure, certain service providing. As mentioned above, civil society is also recognized partner and development process. It is not only part of the decision making, no, it is now in a higher level in building and establishing. Now it is contribute in global developmental process. We can see it again in the SDGs, and let's focus on certain elements here. Number one, complement government poverty elevation programs with community-based tolerate assistance using evidence-based, innovative, and sustained solutions. It also localization the SDGs, monitoring the progress of the implementation of these goals, promote citizen-centric, collaborative governing by the government and the relation between citizen and government, co-productive processes, advocate for poor, including lobbying government, etc., etc. One of the most important elements also, or functions also, as empowering women for climate action. So, supporting women, supporting marginalized groups, supporting vulnerable sectors, spotlight on certain elements and progress decision making, change the pattern of the political process as a whole, not only the identity of civil society as a term. Okay, let's also have certain examples of civil society roles and, for example, 2018. Then I'm gonna leave the issues for you to bring your own examples. One of the most important examples of a global civil society was or happened in Bangladesh. NGOs and trade unions in both Bangladesh and countries that consume clothes made in Bangladesh have been working together to improve working conditions, raise awareness, and call for a fair minimum wage. For example, the Clean Clothes campaign, a global alliance of NGOs and trade unions, is currently running a campaign calling for fashion brand H&M, the biggest buyer of clothes from Bangladesh, to turn around and honor the commitment that more or almost 1 million workers who make their clothes will be paid a living wage by the end of 2018. The Accord of Fire and Building Safety in Bangladesh was launched in 2013 after the collapse of the Rana Plaza building. I do want to talk about more about this example, but what I want to spotlight here is this is only one example of the interference of civil society. But there will be a lot of examples, especially after COVID-19. I want you, for the puzzle of today, to follow the following. Number one, I want you to search for Kony 2012 and tell me what is this case. I want you to search for BDS and tell me exactly the route, the function, the activities, etc., etc. And I want you to link the role of civil society to the implementation of COVID-19 nowadays. Thank you so much. See you soon. Please be careful and remember, things are exactly how you want to see it. They are not what you see. Thanks a lot.